All right, here we go. Brand new Flyers Daily for the 22nd of March, 2024. Flyers Daily, as always, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Flyers go into Carolina and they walk out with a point. Got it to overtime, going into the third period, down a goal, able to get a third period goal from Travis Konechny to force the overtime. He gets the goal about midway through that third period. It's a huge goal, and it's a huge point for the Flyers, who expand their lead on the Washington Capitals to 4 points now. Caps have 2 games in hand. Islanders did not get any points last night. They go down against Detroit, so that gap widens a bit for the Flyers, but they grabbed the point, and there's several elements of the game I liked. Didn't love the second period, and we'll explain why in just a moment. But the Flyers and Canes outduel the Flyers 3-2. Canes with 33 shots, Flyers with 33 shots. Shots, I think, in the first period were 9-8 in favor of Carolina. Kind of a low event first period. Some good saves at each end. Sam Ersson, probably his best save of the period was one that was an oops by him as he turned the puck over kind of behind the net, trying to shovel a pass to his D on his backhand and put it right on the stick of a Canes player. Just so happened that it was Brendan Lemieux, and then he ends up coming back into the net and robbing Lemieux with a great glove save. But we'd end the first period with the game scoreless. Again, Canes just outshot the Flyers 9-8. Each team looked like they had spurts of momentum, and it looked like a pretty evenly matched first period. Then you got to the second, and I think the Canes outshot the Flyers 14-7 in that period, and they opened the scoring 3:56 in when Jordan Martinook picked up his 13th of the season as the third man on an odd man rush situation. He gets it. He's able to beat Sam Ersson, and that puts the Canes up 1-0. But just 25 seconds later, the Flyers answer. You love the answer, the quick answer to get a goal of your own. And the reason why I love the answer is, A, because it comes so quickly after the Carolina goal, but B, how the goal happened. Playing fast is something that we've talked about a ton this year, playing fast in transition. And a lot of times to play fast in transition, there's a one-on-one battle that has to take place that you have to win, whether that's a D killing a play on a rush attempt, and then you're able to flip the possession over and go the other way. On this occasion, it's a 50-50 battle along the boards on the right side of the half boards in the Flyer zone. And it's a rim that comes to Bobby Brink and a Carolina player. But Brink does a couple things really well. First, he puts his body in the perfect position, is able to wedge himself against the Carolina players, create a little space, and then use his stick to create the turnover. And then because he's in the right spot physically, he's able to then get his head up with the puck on his stick, spot Joel Farabee in the middle of the ice, makes a perfect 45-degree angle pass to Farabee, who one touches it to Scott Lawton, who gets him behind the Carolina defense. And the thing about this is it's the other two players that played fast as well. It's Farabee for getting up the ice and into the middle to become an option, and for Scott Lawton to read the play that Brink was winning the 50-50 battle to then dart to get behind the Carolina defense. It takes all three of those elements to play fast. And then the last element is Scott Lawton. We've seen him on breakaways, shootout attempts, penalty shots. He's a guy that loves to do a lot of physical gyrations on his way to a goaltender. A lot of movement up top, especially with the shoulders and the head. And all that is designed to do is to get the goalie to take a nibble. Sometimes you don't take a bite. Just a little nibble's enough. And Freddie Anderson on the shoulder, little shoulder juke, bites, takes a little nibble, goes to his blocker side too far. And what does Lawton do? Just with that left shot, just flip it back to his glove hand side. And you could see Freddie Anderson's reaction. He's like, oh, man, I bit too soon. And it's kind of one of those ones as a goalie, you go, oh, my God, I can't believe I did that. I fell for the move. I felt for the shoulder. And he just is able to deposit it in the net. And that ties the game at 1. But at 10:43, Jalen Chatfield, again, a third guy high is where the goal comes from for Carolina. And this time it's Jalen Chatfield who has a one-time bomb that beats Sam Ersson. I couldn't tell from my highlights that I was able to watch. I never really got that behind the net or behind the shooter look at it. I'm not sure of two things. If one, the puck was deflected after it left his stick, or two, what the screen situation was. I know that Ersson picks up as the puck comes from Aho to the middle of the ice. Aho's on the right side. And when he picks up, that's the arms ultimately come away from the body for a goalie when a goalie picks up to look around the screen or over. And as he gets back set, just doesn't get that right arm tight enough to his body. And I think that puck beats him between his blocker arm and the body. And when you lift up, that's when the arms come up. And when you get back into your stance, you're coming back in, back to elbows in and tighten all those holes. He's not able to get it done quick enough. And that puck ends up in 2-1 Canes. That's where we would be after 2 periods of play. Then in the third period, Flyers got outshot 14-7 in the second. I thought Carolina was just a step ahead in that entire second period. And the Flyers didn't help their own situation, and they helped the Canes because they shortened the ice for them on far too many occasions. Canes, one of the best puck, if not the best, puck possession team in the NHL, and a team that will play really fast in transition. So when you have a team like that, you do not want to shorten the ice. And I thought the Flyers shortened the ice for them far too many times in the period. So you're defending way more. You're not providing offense at the one end. You're tiring yourself out in a long change period. And I thought that some of that was self-created in that second period. But you like how they respond to the first goal by getting a goal. And then you like how they respond to the second period being down a goal with how they played in the third period, because they really pushed the pace in the third period, were the better team, get the game tied at 10-16 when Travis Konechny picks up his 28th goal of the season. First of all, great play from Owen Tippett on the right side to stick with the play, eventually get it down low, and then eventually it comes back to him in the middle, and he gets it to Morgan Frost. He kind of fans on a shot. And I'm not sure if Frost was trying to go through the legs to score again, or if he was going through the legs to pass at Konechny, who's coming out from behind the net and is able to stuff that into a wide open net. We'll see. But it's just a really good play overall of guys collapsing on the blue paint and creating a lot of chaos around the net. And that gets the game tied. So you have your, tic-tac-toe breakout, 45-degree pass to Farabee to one touch to Lawton who goes in for the breakaway goal. And then you have a bit of chaos goal with Konechny's that gets the game tied at 2. And it's a huge goal because it gets the game tied against a team in Carolina that knows how to shut it down. Carolina, when leading after 2 periods of play this year, is 27-2-1, 14-1-1 at home, 13-1 on the road. Ultimately, they end up getting the win because they get it in overtime. But to grab a point out of this game for the Flyers is pretty darn big when you consider a couple of things. One, who the team was that you were playing. You're playing one of the top teams in the league. They've won 8 of their last 9, I think it is. They've been really good. And they're a team that plays well at home. They're a team that scores goals, can defend, has a good power play, and a great penalty kill. We talked about yesterday's episode. They check every box. And even though they were a little erratic in the first half of the season before Christmas, gave up 6 goals twice, 7 once, and 8 one time. They have not been that team in the second half of the year. And that's who you saw tonight. So to do a couple things, hold them to 2 goals in regulation, hold their power play off the board. It was a very well-executed game for the Flyers. Unfortunately, at 1:28, after they have an opportunity in overtime, Joel Farabee's got an opportunity to end it and misses the net. It goes the other way, and it's an odd-man rush, and Farabee's the man back defending the 2-on-1 between Brent Burns and Seth Jarvis. Burns puts a perfect pass on a tee to Jarvis. He ends up beating Sam Ersson, and that's your final score, 3-2. Canes grab 2 points. Flyers grab a point. So what's the shakedown in the standings? Well, first I mentioned earlier that a couple of teams were in action last night that were of importance, and none bigger than obviously the New York Islanders playing against Detroit in Detroit. Detroit doubled them up 6-3 in that game. So here's the fallout. Flyers still third spot in the Metropolitan Division, 70 games, 26-9, 79 points, 4-4-2 in their last 10. And the Flyers, through those 70 games with the 79 points, are 4 points up on the Caps, who have 75 points through 68 games. So 2 games in hand, 4 points back. Now they are 6 points up on the Islanders, who have only 1 game in hand. So it's coming down. At first, we thought, well, the Islanders are the real threat. Now it's the Capitals. But it's a big win for the Flyers. Not a big win, but a big point that they get in the standings. You guys know I'm not a big, you lose in overtime, get a point guy, but that's a big, big point for this team amidst this stretch of games. Game 4 of the 7 of the gauntlet this weekend is going to be daunting for a whole other set of reasons. With the Boston Bruins coming to town, the top points percentage team right now in the NHL. And then Sunday, it's the second highest points percentage team in the NHL. Bruins at .693. They have 97 points in 70 games. And the Panthers, .691. To say it's going to be difficult would be an understatement. Although Sunday's game is 6 o'clock at Wells Fargo. Flyers play at 1 o'clock Saturday, 6 o'clock Sunday. The Florida Panthers play 8 o'clock Saturday in New York against the Rangers, and then 6 o'clock on Sunday. So 22 hours between opening faceoffs. Flyers going to have much more time than that because their game is at 1 o'clock and then the game Sunday at 6 o'clock. So we'll see where that goes if that proves to be an advantage. Sometimes in those games, too, it depends on what happened Saturday, how the game plays out from an emotion standpoint, a physicality standpoint, determines how a team can rebound on a back-to-back. And obviously, Florida is going to be looking for a little revenge against the Flyers, who beat them twice in Florida, 2-1 on each of those occasions. It'd be interesting also to see how the Flyers allocate their goaltenders this weekend. You tend to think, well, you'll probably play both of them because it's a back-to-back and it's 3 and 4. So do they go Felix Sandstrom against Boston on Saturday and Ersson on Sunday against Florida, or vice versa? We'll see how that plays out. It's just going to be one of those situations where maybe you go with Sandstrom Saturday and give Ersson the extra day because he's played obviously a little bit more of late. Flyers certainly in their last 2 games have been much improved in their play. And I don't want to feed into this storyline that it's because Sean Couturier is not in the lineup. I don't buy that. I think that the team has played better. We'll see if Couturier comes back in on Saturday. Before this stretch of the gauntlet, before these games in this run began, after the San Jose game, Toronto, Boston, Toronto, and Carolina last night, and still with Boston, Florida, and the Rangers to come, I had said at that point that I thought the team couldn't get through the gauntlet with any kind of success unless, even if Sean Couturier was playing 12 or 13 minutes, I thought he needed to play 16 or 18 minutes. Now he hasn't played these 2 games in a row. They've gotten 3 points out of him, but I don't think that's because he's out of the lineup. I think the team's process overall has been better, but they're going to have to continue that. So I don't know if he'll be back coming up on Saturday. I would think he would, but we'll see how that plays out. And, there's a lot of conjecture about this situation, and rightfully so, when you healthy scratch a captain 34 days into his captaincy. But I will tell you this. I want to play this clip for everybody from Hockey and Hounds. Now, I tape Hockey and Hounds with John Tortorella every Monday. We usually tape it Monday morning before or after his media availability at practice. And we were talking about, in particular with young players, the difference between their ceiling and their basement, and for them to recognize when they need to be accountable and self-accountable and self-evaluate their play. So we were talking about Morgan Frost initially, and then I want to play this clip. This is what John Tortorella had to say on that day about having some tough conversations about he, as the head coach, and the player not being on the same page in an evaluation of their game. And I think in hindsight, we can pretty much predict one of the 2 players he kind of cites here anonymously is probably Sean Couturier. So here's John Tortorella. I talk about this quite often. Young players that come in, sometimes they have really high ceilings, but they have very deep basements.
Yes.
And for a coach, you just want to know where that player resides at their worst and at their best, the predictability of that. And sometimes it's just bringing the basement up.
That's our job.
Yeah.
That's our job. That's the accountability part of this is you're not going to walk down the steps and hang out in the basement. You got to get back up to the floor here that we need you at. And then we'll push you, and maybe we'll get you some opportunities, and you get some confidence, and you get to the top floor. You're up in the attic and playing up there. And that's our job.
In the rare air.
Yeah, it is. It's our job to monitor that without hurting the player, without absolutely taking everything away from him because he hasn't climbed those stairs quick enough. That's the give and take. And that's evolving as a coach and understanding a particular player. And I think that's happened between Frosty and I.
It's also incumbent upon the player to recognize that he's on the basement stairs and he's walking down.
Well, there is the
we
biggest.
are taking this metaphor to its nth degree.
but there is the biggest part of coaching. A coach's job is to assess the player the way that the coach thinks he needs to be assessed if the player doesn't have the ability to assess himself.
Yeah.
I just had 2 meetings today, okay? And I'm not saying players' names or anything like that, but there's a major problem with assessment. And I had to step in today and make sure I got my point across as what my assessment is. And we've talked about the athlete and the coach. You need to empower. You need to have the conversations and empower them. Yeah, but there's sometimes the coach just needs to say, I said, enough.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you're at. This is where we see you at. Enough, or you're not going to play.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to get there. You have to get back to that kind of coaching them hard or at them.
Yeah.
Versus always empowering and having a two-way conversation.
All right, there he is, Flyers head coach John Tortorella. And that's not abnormal for a coach and a player to disagree about how a player is playing or the evaluation. That's nothing new. That happens quite often in pro sports. But we'll see where this goes. It's obviously a huge storyline right now, not just because of who the player is, but when it's happening in relation to when he was named captain, and also when it's happening in relation to what teams are on the schedule. All valid question marks. So we'll see where that goes. So Flyers grab a point in Carolina. That's what's important right now as well. They'll look to grab 2 more coming up on Saturday against Boston and 2 more coming up on Sunday against Florida. In this episode as well, though, I do want to get to our conversation. We're going to continue our Carnival Conversations from Flyers Carnival, where a couple days we had Yegor Zamula the other day. We've had Cam York featured so far. And in this episode, we are going to feature Flyers President of Hockey Operations, Keith Jones. Now, everybody knows at this point that I worked with Jonesy for a long time in radio at WIP. I was his boss for a period of time. Just goes to show you that if somebody's working for you, treat them well, because you never know when you may be working for them. That's part of the dynamic. But we talked to Jonesy about what it's been like this season from a rebuilding standpoint, day-to-day with the job, trade deadline, and much more. So here's my conversation with Flyers President of Hockey Operations, Keith Jones. It is Flyers Daily, live from the Flyers Carnival, the 47th, and we're with President of Hockey Operations, Keith Jones. How you?
I'm doing great, Jay. Great to see everybody outside getting ready to come indoors and meet some of their favorite players.
You've been at the Carnival for years. This is the first time as the president. You were here as a player, though. Is there some similarities, or do you not know yet?
I'm really not sure yet. It's all great. It's always, number one, really important for our players to recognize that there's, some other things in life that we need to look after, some perspective, and taking care of, those that need it. And I think it's really awesome that it comes at this time of the season where we're hitting a few bumps right now. It's a great opportunity to read and at the same time give back.
And it is a chance for them to kind of ground themselves and clear their head in a way, because you guys are in the middle of this gauntlet right now. And you mentioned, it's been a rough couple of games to start it. Can this be one of those things kind of recharges in a way?
I think it can. Yeah, I think it can. I also think playing a game like we did last night in Boston, where the energy was back, I think that's been such an important ingredient for during the season. I was happy to see that too. Yeah. So there's ebbs and flows in a season where, just sometimes the energy will drop. You have some bugs that run through teams at certain points during the long season. But I thought our energy was back last night, even though we didn't the job in the end. Those are the type of things I want to see here down the last, 14 games or so as we continue to push and gain valuable experience in important games.
Reality can be unwavering at times. And you guys, a lot of this year, you get by with no injuries. Now all of a sudden on the back end, I mean, played 14 different D at this point. I mean, it's incredible what you've had to go through there.
Yeah, it's difficult. There's no doubt. It's a defense league.
Mm-hmm.
Your D is going to dictate how well you play in many cases, and what side of the ledger you're in. It'd be great to get a couple guys back healthy here over the next little while. Hopefully we do. But other players are gaining valuable experience. Like Ronnie Adder's done a really nice job in jumping in. Jinning did a great job in the game that he stepped into. Those guys are going to be important players for us in the future. So there is opportunity there. And this is a year of opportunity. It's just been a year where we've done some really good things and kind of kept in the fight, which has been impressive. And at the same time, we're continuing to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the future. So these are valuable experiences that the guys are going through right now.
One of the things Danny has mentioned is, having that environment of accountability and winning and in a rebuild is a good, I've talked about this a ton. You can't, as a player developing, you can't always say, okay, now we're supposed to win. Let me flip this little switch. I think that's bogus. I think that if you learn that from the jump, then that's a huge part of development.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I entered the National Hockey League going back to the early 90s, you never heard about rebuilds.
No.
Because it wasn't a salary cap type environment.
Buy your way out of it.
There's a way now that I think in many cases it can become a crutch. We don't want that. We want our players to be, held accountable. We want them to push and find ways to win games. We want them to play a style of hockey that's refreshing for our fans to watch. And we want to make sure that they realize that every time they step on the ice is an opportunity to win and impress. And I think those are the qualities that we want to push forward here. There's different ways you can go about doing things. But the number one thing is we want to make sure our players play with pride and provide pride for our fans that are watching them.
I've always been a firm believer if they're going to plug in that score, then play to it. You want to try and win 100%. On it. How's the perspective change for you in just consuming the team? Watching it game in and game out, as opposed to being a broadcaster where you don't have the skin in the game. I know that was something.
Yeah, it's still when you're covering a home team, you still feel that you have some skin in the game because
the travel party.
Team plays well, good broadcast. Team plays poorly, bad broadcast. So there is always something that is connected to the way that the team performs. So it's different now, obviously. That previously in my other life, the game would end and you would move on to the next one. Now game ends and you try to make sure you're better for the next one.
Yeah.
There's a lot more thought that goes into it, and not just for the next game, for a game 5 weeks down the road and a game 3 years down the road.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but we have good hockey people around that are, experienced throughout our sport. And I think collectively we're going to find a way to, continue to make this thing better.
You enjoying it?
I love it. It's been great.
You're immersed.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I've always been immersed in hockey.
Yeah.
It's just nice to be immersed in one team.
Yeah.
It takes you back to when you played. And, throughout my playing career, you lived and died with the wins and losses. And I really appreciate the way our players, act. I appreciate how disappointed they are when they lose and how excited they get when they win. So it's been a really fun group of players to be around.
And in management, there is a camaraderie too that you missed as a player. That's
No
one
doubt.
of the things you always miss.
Yeah,
is the room.
you do. And, you can describe it as a feeling you get when you win and a feeling you get when you lose. But
Collective,
it's when you do it together is what really matters. That's the one thing that you're always searching for after you retire. Now, I had it in a smaller way in the broadcast world because you want to have a great broadcast, you want to do a good job, and it's not about one person. It's a team of people that put on a good broadcast too. So at a much, less stressful level, I've had it, but this, in this case, the pressure is what drives you, and it's kind of a neat feeling.
Jonesy, enjoy the carnival. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Phil.
Great to catch up with Jonesy, and we appreciate him taking the time to join us for this episode of Flyers Daily. Coming up tomorrow, we'll preview game 1 of this killer weekend. It's going to be unbelievable. Flyers and Bruins We'll do that for tomorrow's episode. So join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.